be doing a lab on cellular respiration. Now, we did a previous lab on cellular respirations in humans where we were looking at how exercise affects your heart rate and breath rate, and how that would affect the amount of energy in your system. And how that goes about in terms of a goldfish is a little different. So whereas when we ran it with you, you were actually jumping rope or running for an extended period of time, and then we were taking what happened. We were looking at what happened to your heart and what happened to your breath rates. So we can make a connection between it and the formula for cellular respiration, which is food plus oxygen gives us energy. That's actually adenotriphosphate, the ATP that is being created in your mitochondria. Inside of those mitochondria, this is happening, this kind of cellular burning of the food happens as a result of taking in oxygen from the atmosphere and bringing it into your body. And this is really important because without the oxygen, you can't actually make energy. You need the food and the oxygen to do it. Very similar to how a fire burns. So it's taking in, it has a fuel, and it's actually, it needs to have oxygen around it in order to burn. Just like that, inside your mitochondria, food has to be changed into energy with the help of the gas oxygen. Now, there are some byproducts or things that are released in that, energy being one of them. And then, of course, carbon dioxide is the product, a waste product that comes back out of your lungs and into the atmosphere. And you also release a little bit of water in this process. Now, goldfish are also animals, but they are what we call poikilothermic, which is they actually are cold-blooded. And this doesn't mean that they're necessarily cold or they're necessarily hot. They're not necessarily warm-blooded. They're considered cold-blooded because whatever temperature the outside world is, they make their bodies that temperature. So if it's cold outside, they become cold on the inside. And if it's hot outside, they have to become hot. Now, us as humans, we're warm-blooded, so our temperature is kept the same all the time. And we actually use a lot of energy to make that happen, to keep our temperature exactly the same all the time. But goldfish, one way that we can run a cellular respiration lab on them is by measuring what happens to them when they are exposed to cold temperatures and when they're exposed to hot temperatures. Now, that being said, when we look at this cold, what's going to be happening in terms of him needing energy? So again, Franky the goldfish is going to need to change his temperature. He's going to need to become cold. And then there's something he does in his body. And so it's kind of equivalent to making Franky jump rope or making Franky run the little marathon outside my classroom. So we're going to be conducting an experiment on that, and you're going to be taking some measurements. So what you're going to be wanting to measure is how many times Franky opens his mouth and how many times Franky opens his gills. And you're going to need to watch that twice. You're going to need to watch the video and rewind it to count first his mouths, and then how many times he opens his mouth over the course of 1 minute. And then you're going to need to rewind the video and watch how many times he opens his gills. Now, when you do that, you rewind it, and we're going to be doing it at 3 separate temperatures. We're going to be doing it at room temperature. We're going to do it at cold. We're going to drop the temperature about 5 degrees Celsius, and then we're going to heat it up. So you're going to see that over the course of this series. Now, a reminder too, you're going to want to count mouth and count gills at the different temperatures. And we're just going to be taking a look at what happens in terms of those numbers, what occurs. So you're going to be looking at the video, and from home, as you're watching the video, again, you'll count the mouth, how many times he opens his mouth, and how many times he opens his gills, and you record that into the data table. And then when we're all done, we'll take a look at what's happening. Why is Franky doing what he's doing, and how is that connected to cellular respiration? All right, good luck. And don't forget, you can rewind the video and count again if you think you messed up your counts. It's really important that you get the correct numbers. All right, so these are going to be the supplies you're going to need for this experiment. We're going to need a graduated cylinder. That'll allow us to measure the water. We're going to need a metric thermometer. This metric thermometer, if I bring that into the camera, you can see measures in Celsius. And right now in my classroom, we're about at 25 degrees Celsius. All right, you can see there's also a small beaker. These are dumb beakers, and they do have little lines on the sides, but we don't use those for measuring. We use the graduated cylinder, but this is a very useful tool for pouring liquids on. So we have a 150 ml dumb beaker and a 600 ml dumb beaker. And then we have a stopwatch to keep track of the minute. And then over here, you can see in a little beaker on the side right here, I do have Franky the fish. So there's little Franky. And Franky's going to be what we run through the experiment. Now, during this experiment, we are not going to hurt Franky any way. And you'll soon realize that as we go through. All right, so I've got all of my equipment here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put our liquids into it. The big beaker we're going to use at, we're going to be filling this up to 100 mils. We're going to be putting just a little bit of liquid in here to represent Franky's world. So Franky's world is the environment that isn't going to touch Franky. It's where we're going to change the temperature. Just like in this world, you'll have a lake or a pond that exists, but there's these outside temperatures that affect the pond. So we're going to take our graduated cylinder. I'm just going to reach over to the sink real quick. I'm going to fill that up to 100 mils. Just pour a little bit in there and a little bit back. All right, and we're going to go ahead. It looks like we've got it. I'm just going to hold that up to eye level. I'm reading the bottom of the meniscus. And we've got 100 mils. I'm going to go ahead and pour that into the beaker. All right, so we've got that one. Okay, and now I have my other beaker. This is the 150 ml beaker. And what we're going to do is we're going to pour another 100 mils in there. So let me go ahead and turn that water back on and fill that guy back up. And again, we're going to put 100 mils in this one as well. There we go. And we'll pour a little bit out. Get exactly 100. Looks good. And just bring that up to eye level and read that bottom of that meniscus. And we're going to pour that into that beaker. Okay, so I've got 100 mils there, and I've got 100 mils in the big beaker. So you can see the difference there. And now we're going to take Franky, and we're going to put Franky into Franky's pond. So Franky's pond is the little beaker, and we're going to have Franky's pond. We're going to be then placing it into Franky's world. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and get Franky into the pond. Okay, so what we have is Franky's been now sitting in the room temperature water. The little beaker is inside the big beaker, and he's been sitting there for 2 minutes. Now we're going to go ahead and take the temperature real quick, and I'll remove that stopwatch. Let me go ahead and pull that up, and you can take a quick look at that temperature. So you can see it's just above the 20, 21, 22 degrees Celsius. So this is 22 degrees Celsius. That's the temperature of Franky. And I'm just going to come back down, and we're going to go ahead and get ready to do our count. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that in close. I'm going to get my stopwatch into ready position. And what we're going to do is we're going to be counting how many times he opened his mouth. And then you're going to rewind this video, and you're going to watch how many times he opens his gills. Now, you can't do both at the same time, so you have to do one and then the other. You're going to see the clock up here on the screen. It's at 0 now. You're going to hear that sound. Let me just tell you what it sounds like. There's the start and the stop. And I'll be keeping track of the time while you're counting. So let's get into that position so you can see. All right, and let's just get really close here. Try to get a full vision of Franky. And if you find that he kind of moves around or he seems to turn a little bit, you're just going to do your best to count how many times you saw him open his mouth. This is going to be important just in terms of just noticing how he looks. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click start. When you hear that sound of the beep, it means start, and you'll hear Mr. Reese say start counting. So every time, so we've got the time now, and start. You just want to count how many times you see him open his mouth. And stop counting. Now you're going to want to rewind this tape and count how many times he opens his gills as well. So you'll rewind it to the beginning of this video and then record that into your data table. All right, I'll be back for counting it for the cold temperature. All right, so we've went ahead and we've added ice to Franky's world, not his pond, but to his world. And we've dropped the temperature down to 17 degrees Celsius, so just about 5 degrees below where we started. We dropped it 5 degrees. Okay, so Franky's been in the cold water for about 2 minutes. His pond is starting to get colder inside. And what we're going to do now is you're going to go ahead and count how many times he opens his mouth and how many times he opens his gills. So I'm going to get the stopwatch ready. And remember, we're going to count for 1 minute. So you're hearing me reset my stopwatch. All right, and you're going to do the best you can. Every time you see his mouth open, you're going to count that mouth open. And then you'll rewind this video to the beginning of this one, and you'll watch it again to see how many times he opens his gills. All right, so observation of Franky. This is the cold water, 5 degrees below where we started. All right, let's get him around here, and we'll get a start. All right, here we go. Go ahead and start counting. All right, stop. And at this point, you're going to write down how many times he opened his mouth. And then you want to rewind the video and start again. You can see him there. Okay, all right, we'll be back with we're going to raise the temperature now 5 degrees above where we started, and we'll see what Franky's response is. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we raise the temperature to 27 degrees Celsius, which is 5 degrees above where we started. And we're going to let him sit here for about 2 minutes. All right, we're going to go ahead and this is the warm water. We've raised the temperature 5 degrees. And we're going to go ahead and get the video started. Let's see if we can do that. And I'm going to go ahead and zero my stopwatch. And again, you're going to watch how many times Franky opens his mouth with the warm water. All right, and then we'll rewind it to watch the gills. Time starting now. Go ahead and start counting how many times he opens his mouth. And stop counting. Go ahead and record that. And then go ahead and rewind the video and count how many times Franky opens his gills so you get the other number. Okay, I'll be back with the hot water. We're going to raise the temperature 10 degrees. Okay, so we have now raised the temperature 32 degrees, and now we're going to go ahead and let Frankie sit in here for about 2 minutes. Okay, so Frankie's been in there for 2 minutes, and we're going to go ahead and get a count on this, and then we're going to get Frankie put back into the big fish tank. All right, so here we go. Let me go ahead and get the stopwatch ready. And we're going to again count how many mouths first, and then once you count the mouths, you'll come back and count the gills. All right, on your mark, get set, and we're gonna count for 1 minute. Let's see. Wait, let me get Frankie in the frame. There we go, as best I can. All right, and not cooperating, Frankie. There we go. All right, here we go. Go ahead and start counting now. And stop. All right, and you're going to want to go back and rewind this video, and you're going to want to take a moment to watch the number of times he opens his gills during that minute. Okay, guys, let me go ahead and let's get Frankie out of this hot water and back into his big tank with all of his brothers and sisters. Okay, so this is the tank with all of the little brothers and sisters for the lab. Now you can see that there are some gray fish. These are goldfish that are just a little bit immature. They will actually turn gold. You do have a few genetically different goldfish. Every goldfish is a little bit different. But the gray ones are just younger goldfish. And within the next couple of weeks, they'll actually turn gold too. All right, so I've got Frankie here, and we're gonna set Frankie back into the tank. So we'll take little Frankie, there he is. And we're gonna say bye, Frankie, and Frankie's gonna get poured back into the tank. Here we go. All right, here we go, back into the tank with all your brothers and sisters. And away he goes. All right, and he's back in there and swimming with all of his brothers and sisters.